Welcome. In this investment risk briefing, we are tracking a seismic shift in the global landscape. You see, the old competition for oil, that's being replaced by a brand new battleground, the raw materials that are going to power our future. So today, we're breaking down how this emerging resource war is fundamentally reshaping geopolitical risk for the entire energy sector.
Let's kick things off with a pretty stark warning from analyst Michael Clare. He really puts it plainly, doesn't he? This isn't just about market dynamics anymore. It's about national prosperity and, frankly, survival. As we all move away from fossil fuels, the stakes for locking down these new resources couldn't be any higher.
And that really brings us to the core thesis of this entire briefing. It's simple, but it's powerful. The global energy transition has kicked off a completely new era of geopolitical competition. All those materials that are essential for electric vehicles, for wind turbines, for solar panels, we're talking lithium, cobalt, and nickel, they have, for all intents and purposes, replaced oil as the world's most strategic resource.
So what's really driving this new competitive landscape? Well, it's a massive, truly unprecedented demand shock, and it's fueled almost entirely by the global pivot to green technology.
This slide really helps to visualize the sheer scale of this material shift. Clean energy technologies are just incredibly mineral heavy. I mean, think about it. A single electric vehicle needs over 200 kilograms of critical minerals. That's more than 4 times what's needed for a regular car. And you see this pattern across the board, from power generation all the way to energy storage.
And make no mistake, this isn't some short-term trend. The International Energy Agency projects that this demand is going to grow exponentially. This chart here shows the projected jump by 2040 compared to where we were back in 2020. We're not talking about incremental growth here. This is a complete reordering of global demand for these specific minerals.
To really put a fine point on it, just look at lithium. You know, the cornerstone of today's EV batteries. The demand for lithium alone is expected to increase a staggering 42 times by 2040. 42! That is the demand shock that is sending massive ripples through the entire global supply chain and creating a whole new risk environment.
Okay, so now let's flip the coin and look at the other side of this risk equation. The problem isn't just that demand is soaring, it's that the supply chain is highly concentrated and, frankly, alarmingly vulnerable.
This concentration risk starts right at the source, getting this stuff out of the ground. This table lays it out pretty clearly. The Democratic Republic of Congo supplies nearly 2/3 of the entire world's cobalt. Indonesia, a third of all nickel, and Australia extracts about half of all lithium. From a geopolitical risk standpoint, this creates enormous single points of failure.
But believe it or not, the choke point gets even tighter when we look at the midstream, the refining and processing. And this is where you can see how strategically China has positioned itself. So even when minerals are mined in places like Australia, they're often shipped to China to be processed. China refines about 60% of the world's lithium, 70% of its cobalt, and nearly 90% of all rare earths. That gives them immense leverage over the entire clean energy supply chain.
Now, this intense concentration of supply is fueling a really powerful trend: resource nationalism. Producer countries are, quite logically, starting to assert more control to capture more of the value themselves. We've seen this play out with Indonesia banning raw nickel ore exports to force companies to build smelters in-country. Tactics like this just further constrict global supply and, you guessed it, jack up price volatility for everyone.
So you take all these factors, and what do you get? You get clear geopolitical fault lines. The race for critical materials isn't creating some unified global market. No, it's actually fracturing the world into competing blocks, each one scrambling for its own resource security.
So you can see the world splitting into 2 main camps. On one side, you've got this China-led bloc, which has really established dominance across most of these critical mineral supply chains, with key partners like Russia. And on the other side, you have a Western alliance, led by the US, that is now urgently trying to build secure, resilient supply chains that don't depend on China.
The Western response to this is a coordinated, multi-front effort. You've got Canada leveraging its own vast deposits. Australia is working hard to move up that value chain into refining. The EU just passed its Critical Raw Materials Act to reduce its dependency. And the US is leading initiatives like the Mineral Security Partnership to pool the resources and efforts of all its allies.
And this brings us to a crucial point. This competition is rapidly moving beyond just economics and policy. It is escalating into active conflict. We are witnessing what many analysts are now calling the first skirmishes of a new era of resource wars.
As a prime example, you really don't have to look any further than the war in Ukraine. This isn't just a territorial dispute, it's absolutely a resource conflict. Ukraine possesses some of Europe's most significant deposits of critical minerals, including huge untapped reserves of lithium, titanium, and rare earths.
This really shows the strategic objective, doesn't it? Russia's invasion and occupation have systematically targeted these mineral-rich regions in the east and south. By the end of 2022, Moscow had seized control of territories that contain half of Ukraine's key mineral deposits. Securing these resources is without a doubt a core economic and strategic goal of this conflict. And Ukraine is not an isolated case. Analysts are pointing to other emerging flashpoints where these new and old resource conflicts are starting to converge. In Africa, which holds 30% of the world's mineral reserves, we're seeing a new scramble for influence. And at the same time, traditional oil choke points, like Iran's Strait of Hormuz, and untapped reserves in places like Venezuela, they remain critical. It's creating this complex and really volatile global map where the battle lines for all resources are being redrawn.
And so, this leaves us with a critical question that's facing the energy sector and really global security. The energy transition is supposed to be a shared global goal, right? But the very materials we need to achieve it are becoming a source of this intense zero-sum competition. Whether this competition can be managed through cooperation or if it just descends into a long era of conflict, that remains the defining geopolitical risk of our time.